Stop looking at the asteroid belt. Stop worrying about the supervolcano under Wyoming. Those are planetary problems. We need to talk about a galactic problem. At the centre of the Milky Way, 26,000 light-years from your backyard, sits a monster the mass of 4 million suns. Astronomers call it Sagittarius A star. It's quiet right now. It's sleeping. But the math says it doesn't have to stay that way. If that gravity well decides to wake up, if it starts feeding, it turns into a quasar engine that makes our sun look like a dying candle. Today, we aren't talking about storing beans for a power outage. We are talking about what happens when the physics of the galaxy turns hostile, when the night sky becomes brighter than the day, and the radiation pouring down makes the surface of the Earth feel like the inside of a microwave. This is the ultimate survival scenario: humanity versus the heart of its own galaxy. I know what you're thinking. Tom, it's 26,000 light years away. It can't touch us. That is the comfort of the ignorant. Yes, distance helps, but when a black hole enters an active phase, it launches relativistic jets, beams of plasma travelling at near light speed. If the barrel of that gun is pointed even vaguely in our direction, that distance shrinks to nothing. We are going to walk through the timeline of a galactic wake-up event, from the first sensor spikes to the atmospheric collapse. If you want to understand how to survive when the environment itself tries to sterilize you, you need to secure your spot for this briefing. Check your gear, open your mind, and let's get into the dark. It starts in the high desert of Chile at the ALMA Observatory. It isn't a visual flash, it's data. The radio telescopes monitoring the galactic centre suddenly scream. The quiet hum of Sagittarius A star spikes into a roar. Technicians check the calibration, thinking it's a glitch. It's not. Across the globe, X-ray observatories in orbit go blind, their sensors overwhelmed by a flux of high-energy photons hitting them like a tidal wave. Then, the visible light catches up. In the southern hemisphere, people look up at the constellation Sagittarius and see a new star. It's small at first, a pinprick of violet light where nothing should be. But within hours it swells. It's not twinkling, it is a steady, malevolent glare, bright enough to cast shadows at midnight. The sleeping giant has opened an eye, and it is staring directly at us. The public reaction is exactly what you'd expect: wonder, followed by lethal apathy. Social media floods with photos of the purple star. Influencers livestream from rooftops, bathing in the strange light. News networks bring on astrophysicists who try to explain accretion disks, but they get cut off by anchors asking if it's a sign of the apocalypse or just aliens. No one takes cover. Why would they? It's just light, right? People organise viewing parties. They stand outside for hours, exposing themselves to the initial wave of hard UV and soft X-rays that are punching through the atmosphere. They treat a cosmic sterilisation event like a fireworks display. By the time the skin lesions start showing up 3 days later, the hospitals are already overwhelmed with sunburn cases that don't heal. Here is the reality check. If a new, incredibly bright object appears in the sky, your first move is not to take a selfie. It is to get underground. We are talking about the inverse square law. Even at 26,000 light years, if Sag A star goes full quasar, the energy output is massive. You need to treat this like a slow-motion nuclear blast. First, information hygiene. The internet will be flooded with trash. You need a shortwave radio and the frequencies for government emergency bands, although even those might be jammed by the radio frequency interference from the black hole itself. Second, immediate shielding. You want mass between you and that light. A standard roof is not enough. you need concrete, earth, or water. If you have a basement, that is your new bedroom. If you live in a high-rise glass apartment, you are effectively in a tanning bed set to broil. Move to the core of the building. But here is the twist that catches everyone off guard. The light you are seeing? It's old news. It took 26,000 years to get here. We are looking at a ghost. The event happened before the pyramids were built. This means we have zero way to communicate with the source, or predict what happens next based on real-time data. We are watching a delayed broadcast of our own potential extinction. Worse, because high-energy particles travel slightly slower than light, the visual flash is just the warning shot. The particulate radiation, the protons, the heavy ions, the stuff that tears DNA apart, is trailing right behind it. When the sky lights up, the bullet has already been fired. You have days, maybe weeks, before the particle storm arrives. The visual beauty is the bait. The particle stream is the trap. 2 weeks after the light appears, the grid dies. But it doesn't just flicker out, it screams. The atmosphere has been ionized by the initial X-ray bombardment, creating a massive electrical potential. Transformers in substation yards don't just trip, they arc and explode, showering neighbourhoods in sparks and burning oil. In orbit, the carnage is silent, but total. Satellites, unshielded against this level of galactic cosmic ray flux, fry instantly. GPS goes offline. Telecommunication satellites spin into useless bricks. On the ground, your phone loses signal, then the battery swells and vents gas as the induced current overloads the charging circuits. The modern world ends not with a whimper, but with the popping sound of 1 billion microchips melting simultaneously. The masses wait. They wait for the power company trucks. They wait for the FEMA alerts on phones that no longer work. They assume this is a temporary blackout, like a bad storm. They leave food in the fridge, assuming power will be back in 4 hours. They don't realise that the long-haul transformers, the spine of the electrical grid, are slag. Lead times for replacing those were 18 months when the world was working. Now, they are never coming back. People burn through their flashlight batteries in the first 2 nights playing board games, ignoring the fact that the supply chain just evaporated. They drive electric cars until they die, then abandon them in the middle of the highway, clogging escape routes. It is a failure of imagination. They cannot conceive of a world where the switch on the wall never works again. Survival in a galactic-induced grid-down scenario requires Faraday cages. But not the tinfoil hat kind. We are dealing with induced currents from a charged atmosphere. Anything plugged into the wall is dead. Disconnect everything immediately. Your solar setup? If the charge controller wasn't shielded in a grounded metal enclosure, it's fried. You need to learn the physics of air gaps. Keep your backup electronics, radios, Geiger counters, medical devices, wrapped in non-conductive cloth and placed inside a galvanised steel trash can with a tight lid. Tape the seams with conductive tape. Ground the can. Do not touch it during high flux periods. And forget about restoring the main grid. Your focus shifts to primitive survival. Candles, oil lamps, and mechanical tools. If it has a circuit board, assume it is a casualty of war. Stockpile analogue alternatives now. Wind-up clocks, paper maps, and manual can openers. Here is the twist specific to Sag A star. This isn't just a solar flare that hits the day side of Earth. The source is the galactic centre. Depending on the season, the eye might be visible at night. This means the ionisation is happening on the night side, while the sun hammers the day side. The Earth's magnetic field is getting crushed from both directions. This double pressurisation causes the magnetosphere to wobble and compress closer to the surface. The auroras aren't just at the poles anymore. You will see green and red fire in the sky at the equator. This looks beautiful, but it means the magnetic shield protecting us is failing. We are losing our planetary armour just as the heavy artillery starts to arrive. Month 2. The sky has changed colour. It's no longer a deep blue, it's a sickly, milky white haze during the day. The ozone layer has been shredded by the incoming nitrogen oxides generated by the radiation. Without ozone, the sun, our own friendly star, becomes an enemy. Stepping outside at noon feels like opening an oven door. Plants turn yellow and brittle within hours. The birds stop singing because the birds are dead. Their navigation systems failed and the UV blinded them. You look out your reinforced window and see a world that looks like Mars. Dust storms kick up because the vegetation that held the topsoil down is dying. The wind howls with a strange metallic pitch, carrying the smell of ozone and burnt leaves. The planet is trying to shake us off. People try to adapt with sunscreen and sunglasses. They don't understand that SPF 50 is a joke against UVC radiation that is now reaching the surface. They try to garden. They mourn their tomato plants and try to water them more, not realizing the plants aren't thirsty. They are irradiated. The famine begins here, not because there isn't food in the pantry, but because the future of food is dying in the fields. We see mass migration. People in the tropics, where the ozone depletion is most severe, try to move north or south. But the roads are blocked by dead cars, and moving during the day is suicide. They become refugees in their own basements, starving in the dark because they waited too long to realize that the surface is no longer a habitat. To survive the atmospheric collapse, you must become nocturnal. You sleep during the day in your shielded core. You work at night, but only with full skin coverage. I'm talking welding goggles if you look at the sky, and heavy, tightly woven fabrics. But the real logistic challenge is food. Traditional agriculture is over. You need to pivot to indoor hydroponics immediately. Not the fancy kits with the purple LEDs. Those electronics are fried, remember? You need passive systems. Kratky method. Use sunlight mirrors to reflect light into a protected room, filtering it through UV-blocking polycarbonate sheets. If you can't filter the light, you grow mushrooms. Fungi don't need light, and they can break down the dead cellulose of your dying garden. Stockpile mycelium spawn now. It's the only protein source you can grow in a drawer while the world burns outside. The twist is the thermal expansion of the atmosphere. The upper atmosphere heats up from the radiation absorption. It expands outward into low Earth orbit. This creates drag on all the space junk we've left up there. It's the Kessler syndrome on fast forward. It's not just satellites dying, it's satellites deorbiting. For about 6 weeks, the night sky is full of shooting stars. It looks magical, until you realise some of those shooting stars are chunks of titanium and tungsten survival systems falling at Mach 20. The risk of surface impact increases, but the bigger issue is the chemical pollution. Vaporised metals from thousands of burning satellites seed the upper atmosphere, changing the albedo of the planet. We enter a galactic winter, a global dimming caused by our own falling trash. It gets colder, even as the UV gets stronger. Paradoxical weather. 6 months in. We thought we had adapted. We were wrong. The astronomers who are left, using optical telescopes and manual calculations, notice something terrifying. The accretion disk around the black hole isn't just glowing, it's focusing. A relativistic jet, a tight beam of plasma, is forming. And by a cosmic roll of the dice, the precession of the black hole is sweeping that jet across our sector of the galaxy. It's like a lighthouse beam, and we are standing on the shore. The background radiation counts on the Geiger counters start to tick up. Click, 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 click. It's a sound that never stops. the air outside begins to taste like copper. At night, you can see the beam as a faint, ghostly pillar cutting through the stars in Sagittarius. It's the barrel of the gun, finally locked on. This is where the psychological break happens. When people realise the radiation is penetrating standard walls, they panic. They try to dig. But you can't dig a bunker in a day. People start taping lead flashing to their heads. Useless. They drink colloidal silver. Poisonous. Desperation breeds pseudoscience. Cults form, worshipping the beam, walking out into it to be ascended. They die of acute radiation sickness within days, bleeding out from their gums. The panic leads to violence over the few deep places, subway tunnels, mines, cavern systems. The war isn't for oil or food anymore, it is a war for mass thickness. If you don't have 3 feet of earth above your head, you are a casualty waiting to happen. Let's talk shielding math. Having thickness. That's the only term that matters. For high-energy gamma rays coming from a relativistic jet, you need serious density. Wood is useless. Concrete is okay. Earth is good. Lead is best, but hard to find. You need to build a citadel inside your home. Stack books, furniture, water bricks, and sandbags into a central igloo. Water is excellent. About 1 meter of water blocks almost everything. If you have a swimming pool, drain it and live in the bottom, covered by a roof of soil. If not, line your safe room walls with every gallon of water you have. And you need a dosimeter. Not a Geiger counter that clicks, but a dosimeter that tracks cumulative exposure. You need to know if you can afford to go outside for 10 minutes to harvest your mushrooms, or if that trip will max out your lifetime allowance. Survival becomes a budget of time and rads. The twist with the jet is that it creates muon showers. These are heavy subatomic particles that penetrate deep underground. Even in your basement, even in the subway, you aren't perfectly safe. Muons pass through rock. They interact with your biology randomly. This means the threat is statistical. It's not about avoiding burns anymore. It's about genetic lottery. The long-term survival strategy shifts to redundancy. You cannot rely on one person to have a skill, because that person might develop a tumour next week. You need cross-training. Everyone needs to know how to filter water. Everyone needs to know how to set a bone. The population will thin out not from mass casualties, but from slow attrition. The jet doesn't kill you today, it kills your probability of seeing next year. Year 1. The jet has swept past us, or at least the worst of the focus has moved on. But the world is different. The sky is permanently grey. The surface is silent. The cities are mausoleums of glass and steel, perfectly preserved but empty, because they are radiation traps. Humanity has become a subterranean species. We live in the basements, the sewers, the retrofitted mines. We communicate via wired field telephones run through storm drains. We measure wealth in iodine tablets and clean soil. The sun is a hazard. The stars are a memory. We are the mole people, scratching out a living in the dark, waiting for the galaxy to calm down. Sag A star is still glowing, a permanent violet eye in the sky, watching the wreckage. The societies that failed were the ones that tried to maintain the old hierarchy. The governments that tried to enforce martial law on the surface dissolved because their soldiers got sick. The bunkers that locked their doors and refused to share knowledge died of stagnation and infighting. The lone wolf preppers died first, suicide or simple accidents they couldn't treat alone. The isolation broke them. Humans are social animals. Take away the sun, take away the internet, lock them in a box, and the mind eats itself. The people who thought rifles and MREs were enough forgot that you can't shoot a gamma ray and you can't eat bullets. The survivors are the builders, The connectors. Logistics in the new normal is about air and water filtration. The groundwater might be safe from radiation, but it's contaminated with surface runoff from the dead cities. You need slow sand filters, charcoal activation, which you make from burning wood in low oxygen, and distillation. You need vitamin D supplements. Stockpile them now, thousands of them. Without the sun, rickets and depression will destroy your group. And you need a culture of the long game. You aren't surviving for next week. You are surviving for the next generation. You need to print books. Wikipedia is gone. If you don't have a hard copy of Gray's Anatomy or a guide on how to rewind an alternator, that knowledge is gone from the universe. The most valuable item in the bunker isn't a gun, it's a library. The final twist of the Galactic Wake-Up is evolutionary. The radiation increases the mutation rate. Most mutations are fatal. But the biosphere that survives outside, the bacteria, the insects, the fast-breeding weeds, starts to change. Rapidly. We are seeing hyper-evolution. New bacteria that eat plastic? Maybe. Insects that are resistant to UV but highly aggressive? Likely. The surface world isn't just dead, it's becoming alien. When you do go topside in your hazmat gear, you aren't just exploring ruins, you are exploring a new biological epoch. The Earth is moving on without us. We are the relics. The galaxy forced a reset button, and we are the glitch trying to persist in the code. Now, take a breath, unclench your jaw. Let's look at the real data. Does Sagittarius pose this risk tomorrow? No. The accretion disk is currently quiet. The timescales for a galaxy to turn into a quasar are usually millions of years. We would see it coming. Well, we'd see the gas clouds moving into position long before the fireworks started. The probability of a jet aligning perfectly with Earth is statistically tiny. We are safe in the suburbs. But this scenario teaches us something vital. It teaches us that our stability is fragile. We rely on a quiet sun, a quiet galaxy, and a magnetic field we can't control. The grid failure, the UV radiation, the supply chain collapse. These are the same risks we face from a local solar flare or a nuclear war. The trigger changes, but the survival mechanics remain the truth. The black hole at the centre of the Milky Way is the anchor that holds us together. It created the gravity well that allowed our sun to form. It is the reason we exist. It is also the gun pointed at our heads. We live in a cosmic shooting gallery, and so far, the shooter has been sleeping. But even if the galaxy doesn't wake up, something else will. The sun has its own cycles. The Earth's magnetic poles are drifting. The infrastructure you rely on is aging and vulnerable. You don't need a supermassive black hole to turn the lights out. You just need one bad day of space weather. The question isn't, will it happen? The question is, where will you be when the sky changes? If you want to be the one with the answers when the rest of the world is asking, what now? You need to be here for the next briefing. We're going to talk about the one threat closer than the black hole, the one right under your feet. Secure your spot. You survived the simulation. Now survive the reality. Equip yourself at the official supply depot. Because if the world is going to end, you might as well look prepared.